Desperate Intruder. Now this is an episode that doesn't necessarily focus on rescue of sorts, it focuses on the expeditions of Tintin and Brains as they go treasure hunting in Egypt.
I think this is meant to be more of an adventure story for anyone who is fascinated in the ancient world or any stories about treasure hunting or adventure.
People who liked the Indiana Jones films or something like that. But essentially they go scuba diving. Once again, I must emphasise how much I would love to go scuba diving with Tintin. She's a lovely girl! But anyway, essentially they go down to these ancient ruins at the bottom of this river as part of their expedition to find these jewels in collaboration with this British professor. But they have been followed by an old familiar adversary, the Hood. Dun dun dun! Only this time, he's brought along this big submarine that he's going around marining about in. And it all culminates in him hypnotising both Tintin and Brains, and he ends up trying to extort information out of Brains by burying him up to his neck in sand.
Yeah, it's a very odd sort of episode, this one. There's lots of interesting cliches about adventures in the desert and looking for the ancient world. I mean, when we're introduced to the characters, there's a pretty non-PC representation of an Egyptian taxi driver. I mean, Gabriel Iglesias warned us about this thing.
Didn't you see the red light? As calm as can be. Didn't you see there was no one there?
And then again, when, this guy, he hypnotises Tintin, this is the first time that you get like a pretty interesting hint that Tintin is a relation to the Hood. As she says, when he spoke to me, I didn't recognise him, but I felt like I knew him somewhere far off, so tiny bit of, symbolism there.
Yeah, you needn't forget that the Hood's half-brother is Cyrano, Tintin's father. And it does make you wonder, the origins of all of these characters aren't exactly explored throughout the series. I mean, we get hints that Mrs. Tracy is no longer in the picture and that Jeff Tracy used to be an ex-astronaut. But there's no official explanation as to how long the Cyranos have been in the service of the Tracy family, or whether Tintin really knew the Hood at all.
Yeah, we've kind of been debating this. We've also been debating on where the Tracy brothers come from, because think about it, they don't really look so much alike, so how do we know that Mr. Tracy, Jeff Tracy, wasn't a bit of a playboy of the 21st century? Fathered them all by different women, maybe, and he just took them on because he had the money. A
futuristic Howard Hughes, if you will.
Yes, who knows? He still lives with his mother, which is kind of odd. But anyway, getting back to the story, I mean, the motivation for the Hood, again, as we saw in Edge of Impact, was for money. He wants gold.
Gold!
Yeah, and he seems to be after international rescue just because he wants to be the wealthiest man in the world. And whilst it's interesting, him going after the most advanced organisation in the world, couldn't he just spend his days, trying to rob banks or steal money from the banks or something? I mean, this is the 21st century. There must be some other way of money
what happened
theft.
to some good old-fashioned bank robberies?
The treasure that international rescue seeks will be mine.
But anyway, there's quite a bit of, there's some humorous stuff in this episode, and there's quite a bit of tension. Brains buried up to his neck in sand for most of the episode, crying out for water. If only those drench adverts had come about sooner, eh?
Water. I've gotta have some water. Brains, who on earth did this to you?
Kind of reminded me of a certain episode of The Mighty Boosh. Kind of made me want some soup.
Crouton, crunchy friends in a liquid broth.
Well, I mean, this episode I think is interesting because Brains, I think, for the most of it, is the hero. I mean, he ends up, being the victim of the rescue twice. But at the same time, he redeems himself by going out of his way above and beyond the call of duty to find what he came for. And so we end up with Scott and Gordon having to save him twice over.
Yeah, there's that scene where he goes into Tintin's bedroom and he confesses that he feels guilty about the expedition being at a loss just because he was kidnapped and buried up to his neck in sand. So he goes down again to try and find the treasure all over again. But only the Hood once again thwarts him, hypnotises him, leaving him at the bottom of the ocean and burying him under all of this debris so that it's up to Thunderbird 4 and Gordon to pull him out.
It's interesting because Gordon seems to be the first person to end up in a firefight, this time underwater, because he was the first guy in Perils of Penelope to take on the adversary with his pistol.
Yeah, this time Thunderbird 4 versus the Hood submarine, and they engage each other with missiles and the like.
Yeah, it knows how to take a pounding, Thunderbird 4. I mean, I guess all the Thunderbird machines are capable of that.
Yeah, as you would imagine rescue equipment to be very sturdy and stuff. It's not a very, yeah, I mean, not that much happens in this episode. It's a very straightforward narrative. It's just, you know, Tintin and Brains on an over-glorified caravan holiday, I guess. I mean,
Literally, there's 2 caravans.
yep, just out of, basically, Thunderbird 2 transports them, opens the pod, and out comes this very impressive all-terrain desert buggy, but it's towing 2 caravans along, which just makes me think of all the times going to, like, these caravan resorts.
So very British. And it's interesting that the professor at the end, when he's in hospital, he's reading this book called Treasure the Easy Way. I think maybe the moral of this story is to tell kids not to be greedy, I guess. If you really want something, don't let it cloud you, because it'll turn you into a monster like the Hood.
Yeah, there's more than one different kind of treasure in the world. But no, definitely, did you enjoy this episode? I thought it was a very straightforward episode. Not a very exciting one, but
I liked it
still a good one.
because it seemed to pay homage to a lot of the classic desert adventure stories that Jerry Hansen obviously loved, like maybe Lawrence of Arabia.
What I liked most about it is how they took advantage of a lot of underwater sets. There's a lot of scuba diving in the episodes, and a lot of them swimming around underwater. Yeah, we've seen underwater activity in episodes before, like Day of Disaster and Terror in New York City. But this is the first time, really, where it's mostly just people scuba diving around these ancient ruins. It did remind me a lot of Stingray.
And you do see the Tracy brothers in their wetsuits for the first time.
Oh yeah, you've just reminded me as well. One thing notable about this episode is that John is out of Thunderbird 5. At last! John is out of that horrible, horrible Thunderbird 5. And he's actually spending some time on Tracy Island.
So he's obviously on shore leave, whilst Alan, who we don't see in this episode, presumably is up there in Thunderbird 5.
Yeah, it's established in a future episode, City of Fire, I think, that him and John take it in turns every month to go up and down and just basically swap duties, which makes me think that Alan is probably the second loner of the group. I mean, that's just my imagination anyway.
But then again, it's established later on, I think all the brothers know how to operate every aircraft. They just got picked for each specific job.
Yeah, they were allowed to choose their favourites, I imagine.
Yeah, because there's one where Alan actually has to go in on Thunderbird 1 whilst Scott's looking after Tracy Island.
But anyway, that was Desperate Intruder. You have anything else more to say about it? I think that's about everything.
I think so. It's, I guess the only one question that remains is that, don't the Tracys kind of gather after a couple of missions that there is this guy following them who is so elusive and strange?
Yeah, this is like the 3rd time the Hood has shown up now and tried to get involved in International Rescue's affairs. I'm sure they'll catch on soon enough, though.
Yes, well, you never know. You never know.
Well, tune in next time for the next episode, which I think is another episode I haven't seen yet, End of the Road.
Oh yes, I don't know much about that one, but I'm sure it'll be good.
FAB.
FAB.